Hello, Rosie Collins here with another Bucky O'Hare episode commentary. This is The Good, the Bad and the Warty, which is a weird title for this one. But really, how are you meant to name all 3 episodes of this long story in this opening 3-parter? A very good opening 3-parter by Christy Marks, whom I praised on my commentary for the Corsair Canards. I began this series with the 2 Deadeye episodes, because Deadeye is my favourite, in case you didn't know. This 3-parter is an ensemble piece. Everyone has their part to play. So, no axe to grind this time about whether there are or aren't meant to be 2 armed ducks in the Aniverse. The cliffhanger at the end of A Fistful of Simoleons was the righteous indignation flying right into the mouth of the Toad mothership, and that was a really exciting cliffhanger just while Amphibian tries to report the news. I remember when I first saw that being really worried for them, and I don't know how I waited a week to find out what happened. Toadborg doesn't want to talk to Amphibian, he has no time for such trivia. But look, they're taking it in their stride here on the righteous indignation. They're still concerned with recovering the codes. They're not worried about their own hides, they're worried about Genus. Deadeye's going to create the diversion you're about to see. Am I very stupid? I'm not quite sure how he makes the ship look like it's about to explode. But there we go. It's made the Toads all run off very effectively. I was thinking about what I said on my The Warriors commentary about violence in this cartoon. Bucky's armed. He's not going to shoot at live toads. Kick that one out of the little spaceship or space boat there. Fine. But they don't shoot to kill. They shoot to disarm, they shoot to escape. They will quite happily shoot mechanical antagonists, as we shall see. And Bruiser is extremely violent with the Toads. I mean, look at that. Smushing him up and bouncing him like a ball. But it's slapstick, isn't it? So that's why it's okay for a cartoon. Nothing to say about you, Dogstar. Sorry, I want to keep talking about Bruiser. In the first episode, War of the Warts, they had a scene similar to that one with Bruce. And it seems pretty obvious that after that first episode, they had a bit of time to go off and think about how to develop the series further. The introduction of Toadborg and Dogstar is evidence of this, the change from the Toad Menace to the Toad Wars. And also, with those other characters comes Bruiser. I'm sure they thought that sequence with Bruce scrunching up and bouncing the toads or whatever else he did was too good not to have again, not to have a baboon as a regular thing. Now, we're quite happy to shoot at this void droid. That's definitely not sentient. Willie's a scientist. He should probably think the water pistol is worth a try. And it certainly was, wasn't it? It saved their lives there. Deadeye doesn't understand that it's a water pistol. He thinks it's some secret human weapon. The Toads knew what it was. Saw the water going in there on their monitor. Getting in Deadeye's pirate background now. He had the urge to take that money. It's only play money. He doesn't understand that either. He thinks Willie's some kind of hardcore gambler now. And here's Alligator, wondering what the hell Willie is. And I said on my commentary for the Warriors, we don't often get any kind of what is that when people see Willie, but I guess after this episode, the antagonists are quite used to him. Bucky believes, quite reasonably, Toadborg is a robot, so he will shoot the bejesus out of him. A little bit of damage done there, but that's going to be fixed the next time we see it, and he's not going to get any more damage from these blasters. And I do love the way Bucky goes, ah, when Toadborg grabs him by the ears there. I think when I first watched this as a young child, I'd learned quite recently, not that I'd tried it, but I'd heard you mustn't pick rabbits up by their ears, it hurts them. There's still, today, this Victorian children's book knocking around in my house, all held together with tape, where the little girls get some pet rabbits and are told by their guardian, pick them up by their ears. But no, that's quite wrong, as Bucky will tell you. But is he a rabbit or is he a hare? They normally go with hare, and they're not actually the same animal. There's some confusion about that in the US, largely, most probably because the only species of hare indigenous to North America is the jackrabbit, which isn't actually a rabbit. But let's not get pedantic about that. Jenny also assumed robot there. We've seen her use that spell on robots, and in The Artificers of Aldebaran, she's going to warn Felicia, never use that spell on a cyborg. Well, we've just seen why, and it's not like she never did it. She just did. Willie is very brave, the way he confronts and stands up to the antagonists here. In San Francisco, he is kind of a fish out of water. He's presented kind of like a scientist in a world of hippies. And he doesn't get on very well at school, and he gets bullied, as we're going to be reminded later. But he stands up to his bullies, doesn't he? Ends up building this skateboard with them, but that's later on. In the Aniverse, he fits in very well. He's the engineer on the Righteous Indignation, just when they needed one. He's made good friends there. His genius is an asset rather than making him a target. And he certainly does his bit in the Toad Wars, bobbing off Al with his play money there. Very well done. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked quite as well as he hoped, as we shall see later. And again, Deadeye's quite happy to shoot at Toadborg on the assumption that he's a robot. But Toadborg is indestructible, and he's very effective. He's already got Bucky and Jenny, and now he's just chucked Deadeye out of the Toad Croaker. And there we go. 3 hostages. When I was a child, I didn't know the word jettison. To me, it sounded the most like Jennison, but I know now. Jettison tubes, fine. I understood that you would die in space, and I can't quite remember if I was over the stage of thinking you'd suffocate in space. It was an episode of Red Dwarf called Confidence and Paranoia that made me understand that you kind of explode if you're in space with no spacesuit, because there's more to there being no air whatsoever than just that you suffocate. Toadborg is at first alarmed to see what appears to be a Beetlejuicean berserker baboon, and a bit later he's going to say nothing can harm me now, all evidence that in the show this happened fairly recently. There is a kind of backstory that you can read on the DVD extras, along with the cast that's all wrong and has characters twice with different actors, and includes the characters the wheelchair monster, Mr. Toad, and Piddly the monk rat. But those backstories were sort of official at some stage. I think we can trust that. But within the cartoon, they seem to have not gone with some of that. Toadborg seems to have been made a cyborg fairly recently. rather than 10 years ago or whatever it says. Yeah, that Red Dwarf episode helped me to understand this, whether I first saw it or after I'd had it on the video that I recorded for a bit. And when I got to secondary school, aged 11, and the science teacher was putting stuff in the bell jar and making it kind of expand by taking the air out, I thought, okay, that's why you explode, your molecules spread out all over the space. We have the classic heroic nobility here. It doesn't matter what happens to us. Deadeye's kindly explained. Those are baboon boots that will stomp anything to bits. But of course, with anything digital, you can quite easily make a copy. And Al Negator was, from his point of view and the Toad's point of view, right to do so. And poor Willie, he's thrown away his life and the lives of Bucky, Jenny, and Deadeye for nothing, as far as he knows. This is high-stakes stuff as far as Willie knows. He's going to die. Now, that animation's a bit weird. It looked like Al was eating the simoleons, which look like sort of beads or pebbles. We don't see money like that again. It looks like coins the next time we see simoleons. Toadborg is extremely effective with his indestructibility and his ruthlessness. Unfortunately, he's gone and left them. Has he noticed that the Aldebaran has a strange power? He thinks of it again in the Artificers of Aldebaran. Not sure why Mother Aldebaran was green there. She won't be when we see her again, but oh well. Those paint and trace department don't always know exactly what to do. This idea of Jenny's powers being super secret, I'm not very keen on that. There was a show on TV when I was older, more like a teenager, called The Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog, which I shall come back to, but first, Toad Air Marshal is right. If anything happens to Toadborg, having the codes in his database, they will be helpless. He did try to point out that this is not a very good idea. Come back to that. But in the Mystic Knights of Tir na Nog, which is basically Power Rangers but set in ancient Ireland, all the characters, all the protagonists certainly knew who the Mystic Knights were, and they were very open about it. And I remember saying to my brother Jake, I like that. I like how everyone knows who they are, and the king is happy to say to his own daughter, oh, you better go and get your Mystic Knight armour on and with your friends and sort this all out.
Well done, Bruiser.
The secrecy of Aldebaran doesn't appeal to me personally. Jenny had to ask permission to save her own life and the lives of her friends. Fortunately, she was granted it. That was ages ago. We're back on the Righteous Indignation now, and Blinky, quite alone, without Willie to help at all, while Bruiser did his bit by keeping the toads off, has restored all the Righteous Indignation's functions to 70% of standard operation. Brilliant. Well done indeed. Why were the bay doors even open, you might question? Oh well. There's Dogstar again, come to help. Wolf next to him. We don't see a lot of Dogstar's crew. The crew of the Indefatigable, of course. Wolf has lines in a few episodes. Rumblebee, a couple of episodes. Digger and Pitstop Pete, one each, I think. Not a lot of room for development, anyway. But, oh well. With only 13 episodes, you can't go that much into that many characters. No, shooting this isn't going to do much good, is it? And I like this line coming up. Bucky's going to say to Jenny that he's a sucker for traps when he gets in the trapdoor here. There he goes. He is, actually, and if you watch The Search for Bruce, you'll see that he's really a sucker for traps, detrimentally so. That's a little bit annoying in that episode, but here he is doing the right thing, and so is Willie. He's disobeying a direct order, waving his spanner at Bucky in a moment, pointing out, you need me to turn off this climate converter. he's right. And this seems to be a POV shot, but then Bucky shoves Willy out of sight and Toadborg doesn't seem to have noticed. So as a POV shot, that's a bit weird. Oh well, never mind. Toadborg's under the impression that Bucky hasn't learned. Shooting at him won't do any good. But actually Bucky has learned, and he's using his goading skills, which we see here are very effective, to make Toadborg rush at him and crash into bits of the climate converter, which maybe have helped to Willy, but mostly it's Willy turning it off, making it ineffective, I think. Making it blow up, in fact. It's difficult to know what to say during these action sequences. Some scenes, they don't go on long enough for everything you want to say about them. These action sequences, the action figure doesn't do that with its arms, does it? You'd think they'd go for that as a cool gimmick to sell the toy. These action scenes, there's only so much you want to say about them, and they do go on a bit. Deadeye there came to get Willy. Made some comment about mutiny, disobeying the order, but no, it's okay. Willy was right. Look at how useful he's been doing that. Bucky's jumping powers here. The ship's a bit too high. Bruiser's caught him by the cape, so it's okay. Teamwork there. Up goes the climate converter. There go the codes. Was that Toad Air Marshal's fault? I think not. And yet, he knows when this science toad with the white coat tells him the defences are turning on them, he knows he's going to get the blame. Where's Complex with Air Marshal, you despicable failure? Coming up, but look, all the toads are escaping. Nothing fatal happens to anyone because it's a cartoon. There he is. But look, it wasn't the Air Marshal's fault, and he did point out if anything happened to Toadborg, they'd be helpless, and now the mothership's been destroyed, and definitely not his fault. Poor Toad Air Marshal. And everyone on Genus is happy and cheering. The heroes. And Willy's about to go back to San Francisco, where he doesn't really belong and doesn't really fit in and isn't a hero. Nobody seems to think very much of him, except perhaps a few teachers. Where's Jenny with that Aldebaran memory stone? I talked about this on my commentary for the Corsair Canards. It's very useful in practical terms because these guys need to be able to communicate with Willy in our universe. And Al has gone to Mammal Run Bar. Willy told him those Willies were backed by mammals everywhere. Maybe he normally goes there. This ape chimpanzee, do you reckon? Seems to know him pretty well. It wouldn't make sense if he was talking to some sort of amphibian or reptile bartender. But this chimpanzee is obviously very open to whatever custom. There are a couple of toads there, and I'd like to come back to that. He's going to make Willy pay very dearly indeed, but actually he's not. He's going to forget all about it. And we saw Doug McKenna, the bully, in the previous 2 episodes. Willy's persuaded him to do the science project and help him in school instead of beating him up. And this guy here, putting his arm around Willy, saying don't listen to him. He hangs out with Doug McKenna anyway. He's got no spine. He doesn't want to be a bully, but he also doesn't want to be shunned by his peers. Don't have a lot of respect for him, but hopefully by now he's grown up and become a good guy. And there endeth the episode, and there endeth the 3-part season opener. And I like it very much. It's very good, very exciting, all that running around on the Toad mothership. nearly getting jettisoned into space, all that kind of stuff. Next time, I plan on doing a commentary on Bye Bye Berserker Baboon. I do hope you'll join me for that one. Music goes on a while, actually, doesn't it? Like those action sequences. These are not things that actually happen in the show. Specially animated sorts of things that might happen. And there we go, we're at the end. So, thank you for listening, and goodbye.